Hello, friends. So, we have seen the contents as well as some bits with related to lubrication as well as lubricant. So, today I'll go for the bearings. So, bearing is a machine part whose function is to support secondary member. So, it is a machine part which is going to support secondary member. Okay. So preventing its motion in the direction of applied load, but at the same time allowing the motion in another free defined direction. Okay. So the portion of the shaft is supported by the bearing is called journal. Okay. So the supported portion of the shaft, the portion of the shaft supported by the bearing is called journal. Okay. So it is what a portion of shaft supported by bearing is called journal. Now in another direction, so bearing is a connector that permits the connected members to rotate or to move relative to one another. So often one of the member is fixed and the bearing acts as a support for the moving members. So most bearings support rotating shafts against either radial or axial forces. So now based on the supporting, so it is what one member is stationary and another member is rotating. So now which is going to support for the moving members. Okay. So now most bearings support rotating shafts either against either radial or axial forces. Okay. Supports for axial or radial forces. Now what happens to minimize the friction, so the contacting surfaces in a bearing may be partially or completely separated by a film of liquid, okay, or gas. These are sliding bearings, and the part of the shaft that turns in the bearing is the journal. Now, under certain combinations of force, speed, fluid viscosity, and bearing geometry, a fluid film forms and separates the contacting surfaces in a sliding bearing, and this is known as hydrodynamic film. So that is what based on the force, speed, fluid viscosity, and bearing geometry, a fluid film forms and it separates. Okay? That is what a fluid film forms and separates the shaft and bearing. That is what creating a hydrodynamic film. Yeah, it's what creating a hydrodynamic film. Now, an oil film can also be developed with a separate pumping unit. Okay, so now in hydrodynamic, what happens because of the viscosity, because of the speed, as well as the fluid, that's what the force. You're going to get in some form of fluid film between the shaft and the journal. Okay. Now, another one case is that an oil film can also be developed with a separate pumping unit. Okay. So that is what oil film can be generated with separate pumping unit. Okay. So that supplies a pressurized oil to the bearing. Okay. That supplies pressurized oil between journal and shaft. So, and this film is known as, and this film is known as hydrostatic film. Now, based on the surfaces in a bearing, so it may be separated by balls, rollers, needless. So those type of bearings are called as a rolling bearings. Okay. So further, when a metal to metal contact occurs, low friction bearings materials such as bronze alloys and Babbitt metals are used to reduce the friction. The principal advantages of these bearings is the ability to operate at a friction